Iran, or Persia if you're hip or old. It's a country not exactly loved by the Western world. For years, it's been one of the main centers of aggression and fear from the US, Europe, and others in the Middle East. It makes sense. Iran is a powerful nation and has historically been a Middle Eastern center for culture and power. It might not be as powerful as it projects though, with a very shaky standard of living, economy, and government which switched entirely not just over 40 years ago. The Persians have lived here for millennia though. It's not likely that they're going anywhere, and since they're here to stay, it begs the question, what can they expect in the future? Will Iran be the power it projects, or will it stagnate and switch up again? Iran is one lucky guy. Look at where it sits in the world. It's right smack dab in the middle of the Middle East, the Caucasus, and Asia. Iran is the middleman between these different areas of the world, and it has historically acted as that. They've been the center for trade of the region, being one of the main paths on the Silk Road back in the day. And money talks. Trade is power. Iran has been able to influence Middle Eastern, Central Asian, and South Asian cultures for a long time, spreading their language, religion, trade, and these buildings. What really has helped Iran become like this is its outer shell. Iran is like a turtle, protected on its outside by mountains. The Zagros Mountains, Elbrus Mountains, and Armenian Highlands protect the interior of this nation, which just so happens to be a huge desert plateau where almost no one lives, the Dashti, Lut, and Kavir. Okay, if it's too hot and dry to live here, then how has Iran made it this far? Simple, the people went up into the mountains. The mountains don't just serve as protection, but the main area where Iranians live. Their capital, Tehran, is over 1 kilometer over sea level, with other cities much higher too. In these mountains, it's a lot more diverse than the hot deserts below. There are grasslands, forests, actual plants, and water to drink and survive. The one major downside about living in the mountains though is that rivers do not come easily. Well, they certainly spill out of the mountains, but the bumpy terrain makes them stop very soon, and the elevation differences make it almost impossible to navigate them. So unless you were taking a camel, the Iranian people were rather disconnected until modern times. This disconnectedness also changes the pace of change in the nation. Since it's made up of small groups of people, they tend to not embrace change too often. So when changes do come, it suddenly happens all at once. Maybe in a big revolution or countrywide protest or something. The land transport for most of its history has been no biggie, since most of their society revolved around trading with the outside world over land. But recently, it's a bit bigger of a deal because of this Gulf. The Persian Gulf, or Arabian Gulf, is one of the most important global hubs for oil shipment and trade, and it squeezes down over here to the Strait of Hormuz, which Iran pretty much controls. It wasn't really until recently in its history when Iran had to make a powerful navy in the south for its trade. It's been alright, but not the best. A stronger navy is almost certainly needed in the future to secure the Hormuz trade route, a route in which over 1/4 of global oil supplies flow through. Iran is a country which has spread its power outwards, with quite few countries coming inwards. For the most part, almost all changes in governments or policy come from inside the mountains all at once, and when it doesn't, as we'll see, Iran gets a little bit crazy. The history of Iran goes back to at least the year -4000, but we don't have time for that. Civilization sprung up in Iran as one of the first places on Earth, and first to become advanced, as we say nowadays. And since ancient times, it has been spreading its empire and culture outwards. The Median, Achaemenid, Seleucid, Parthian, and Sasanian empires were all based around Persia and spread Zoroastrian culture outwards until the Muslims invaded. The Persians were weak from constantly fighting with the Byzantines, and the Rashidans used it as a time to strike. They ended up defeating the Persians, conquering the whole region and converting them to Islam. The thing is, Persia was wet and green and could support many more humans than the deserts of Arabia could, so they ended up becoming the center for Islamic culture, spreading Persian ideas outwards through this huge empire. It's one area where Arabization failed. While places like Egypt, Iraq, North Africa, and the Levant essentially turned Arab, the Persians stayed Persian. Good times stayed during the Islamic Golden Age, when culture and science and math boomed until the Turkic invasions. First the Ghaznavids invaded, and then the Seljuk Turks, and then what they were all running from, the Mongols wiped out Persia. They all had assimilated to Persian tradition and culture when invading, even spreading that outwards when they conquered more land. But the Mongols didn't want their culture. They wanted death. They destroyed Persia. Cities were burnt down and razed. The whole place was looted, and up to 3/4 of the population died in the invasions. The new Persia that was rebuilt from the flames was a different one. When the Mongols split up, the Persian region became the Ilkhanate until Timur made it the Timurid Empire. After that, the Safavids took power with their forced conversions to Shia Islam, which marks one of the major times that the government influenced Persian culture and not the other way around. After them, the Afsharids, then Zands, then Qajars, all controlling Persia, assimilating to the culture and spreading outwards. Blah blah blah, you get the idea by now. World War I marks a major change in Persian history and the start of the recent history. Now originally, Persia was neutral during World War I, which makes sense. They're not European and it's mainly a European war. But Europe finds a way into every corner on Earth, and during World War I, Persia was invaded by Russia and Britain, or really the Anglo-Persian Oil Company, but most people just call it BP nowadays. The British needed to keep the oil flowing, so they were behind a coup in 1921, putting Reza Shah in charge, starting the Pahlavi dynasty. Until World War II, that's how it stayed. But after the Pahlavis stopped cooperating with the British and now Soviets, they invaded again, setting up supply lines for oil and not fully leaving until after the war ended in 1946. This time they put Mohammad Reza Shah in charge, who was a little bit more liberal economically, a little bit more fine with foreign powers coming in, more power was given to the parliament, but he was also quite corrupt and parliament was a little unstable at the time. After 5 years of this, they elected this guy, and he had decided that oil in Persia belongs to the Persians and not the UK, and attempted to nationalize the Anglo-Persian Oil Company, sparking modern tension between Persia and the West after Western nations refused to work in their new nationalized company. No, 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 said the UK and the US, and the US's first foreign coup during the Cold War, they set their guy back in charge to make Persia friendlier. Only thing is, their institutions became harsher, authority grew, corruption grew, and secret police roamed the country during this time. The pro-Western policies were generally accepted among the people as long as their life was good, until the oil shock of 1973. Oil prices boomed from an OPEC boycott to the West. The new revenue combined with overt corruption in the government got into all the wrong places and was mismanaged, which made the government now nationalize oil, causing mass inflation, recession, and unemployment. Harsh enough conditions for a revolution if you ask me. The Iranian Revolution was led by Ruhollah Khomeini, made up of general anti-West sections of Persia. They had Islamists, Kurds, communists, liberals, and students all coming together to protest against foreign power. The Islamists ended up being the side which won the revolution and turned Persia into Iran. Iran changed into a theocratic state, now pretty much isolated on the world stage. There was a period of rebellion, cultural revolution, another oil shock, police crackdowns, and war with Iraq, which made life right after the revolution some of the hardest in modern times. Iran has turned into a very controlling and extractive state. I mean, if your ruler has the title Supreme Leader, something isn't right. Sure, there have been plenty of modern protests after the Iranian Revolution, but nothing nearly as big as it. The reason I mentioned all those empires which rose and fell is because throughout its whole history, Persia has either only changed from the inside or converted its invaders to its culture. For the first real time, Persia was greatly influenced from outside since World War I, and it caused the Persians to snap, going into an isolationist extreme in the opposite direction. Eventually, there will be a time when Iran needs to abandon some of its revolutionary principles. Whenever it wakes up from its post-revolution hangover, it can change again, probably from the inside. Civil unrest will be less of a bug and more of a feature for this mountainous, isolated, and historically independent autocratic country. Iran has been the center of their region's economy for a long time now, so when they snapped into isolationism, how much did they lose? But its economy is kinda in the gutter right now. Can they fix it? Well, during the Pahlavi dynasty, their economic progress was fairly good. They were building infrastructure, investing into education, and building an industry. Much of that industry was in the form of private oil companies who weren't even investing until the late 60s, but it did help create a skilled middle class in the nation. Obviously, that came crashing down after the 70s, as we saw, and the new regime of Islamic Republic was completely different. The new regime aimed for economic independence, a raise in the standard of living, and not just tiny unemployment, but 0% unemployment. Through central planning, they had hoped every single Iranian would get a job, never happening as the unemployment rate has been about 12% ever since then. The Iraq War and violence from the revolution destroyed the production of the country, along with a world who really didn't want to buy Iranian goods anymore, caused a tank in the output per capita of Iran, not recovering until really the 2020s. The traditional economy of most countries is based on farming, and Iran is no exception. But as the farmers started moving out into the cities for more opportunity and industry, their share decreased. Now, only around 17% of Iranians are farmers in a relatively dry and bumpy country. Translation: Iran has needed to import food since the 90s, making them extremely vulnerable to sanctions from food-rich countries like... In fact, their overall imports are over twice as much as their exports. Over half of those exports are petroleum-based, whether oil, plastic, or chemicals. And the geographic location being in the middle of Asia and the Middle East and having Hormuz as a chokehold means Iran is the one to ship them to places like China, India, and Turkey. Despite all this relatively decent industry, Iran is still lagging behind the region and where it should likely be. Their GDP per capita has only risen about 1,000% in 30 years. The problem most likely lies in the government policies. The government of Iran has always promised to be big and juicy, providing many services for the nation. But it's just not managed the greatest. With corruption rampant and having a poor population, the government can't really afford their services. Along with tons of handouts for producer subsidies, the government seems to just be printing money, causing chronically high inflation in Iran, an average about 15% for the last 40 years. It only got worse when in 2010 and 2018, the USA decided to sanction Iran after political troubles. Their currency crashed, foreign investors GTFO, and protests are common. The issues of poverty, their trade balance, unemployment, and inflation have been common since the revolution, and it might be coming to a boiling point soon, with conditions worsening for the first real time since the revolution. Who knows, a new change might be coming soon. In terms of people, today Iran has 80 million people and could easily hit 100 million by 2050, slowly stabilizing and falling after. With a median age of 32 years old, there's a good mix of younglings to babas to keep the country growing, and those 20 million extra Iranians will only grow it faster while not going too fast. It also means that there's not much time before its demographic peak of a country full of 30 to 40-year-olds happening in the next few decades. Or actually, it will have two demographic peaks with these two cohorts in their population pyramid, one pretty much there now, the other in 20 to 30 years. This second wave of Iranian Gen Zers will save the nation from a demographic collapse, as immigration to Iran is not the healthiest right now. With an urbanization rate of 74%, Iran has the demographic structure of a developed nation without the opportunities of one. It could be very easy to see these demographics adapt to a more productive, export-led country. Who are these people though? Ethnically, Iran is not unified, but mixed together, being more or less unified by the mountains for much of their history. Half to two-thirds are Persian, 16% are Azeri, 10% Kurdish, and 10 to 20% others. Their official language is Persian, but only around half of the population speaks it natively. But what really unites them is Islam, with 94% of the country being Shia Islam, the largest Shia nation on earth. Who knows how long it will stay like this though, since living under a theocratic rule doesn't make the people, especially young people, too adamant to be very religious. The demographics are united, but if there were to be some sort of catastrophe or economic failure, it might stir up some certain ideas about independence among the fringes of the country, especially in the northwest. As long as Iran can become prosperous, which, good one, The outskirts of the nation will accept being part of the Persian sphere of influence as they have done plenty of times before. Depending on how prosperous they are, they might even attract more areas into their sphere. Persian culture has always been strong at assimilating new areas to its customs and traditions. Persian culture will never die, at least not for 1,000 years, but the radical revolutionary culture might. So where does that leave Iran on the world stage? Can Iran make its own sphere of influence like in the past? Let's look at its neighbors. First up is Saudi Arabia. According to these comments on my video about Saudi Arabia, it looks like they will rise up and become the strongest nation on earth. After all, Saudi oil demand will never run out. No. Saudi Arabia is in a very dangerous situation, being a flat piece of desert which survives off of imports. The government of Saudi Arabia uses its military to protect itself from its own people rather than foreign governments. The country relies on imported foreign labor to make the small Arab elites rich, and it purposefully meddles with and destroys the countries around it in order to keep a buffer zone in the sand. As soon as they're no longer protected from the US or Europe, the Saudis will find themselves in a very hostile environment after bullying everyone there for years. The Saudis are declining and it will leave a power vacuum that Iran can take advantage of or influence. The West has decided they like the Gulf states better anyways, and they could become very hostile towards Iran to protect their oil lanes. Also trying to take advantage of the decline of Saudi Arabia is Turkey, who has been a bit more aggressive than usual since 2010. They've been more militaristic, religious, and a little neo-Ottoman, one might say. They'll be a strong trade partner to Iran, but with opposing interests for the region, they might not be the best of friends. They're both the link between the East and West and a crucial part of the continent's supply chain, so they will have to work together but secure their own pockets first. Turkey is also in the same position as Iran too. Their current state and economy is not the hottest. Perhaps the first one to fix itself will be rewarded quite handsomely in the region. Globally, it's likely Iran continues to ally itself with China. The nation honestly doesn't need the US's aid in order to become rich, but they'll need to open themselves up to some sort of foreign investment. In a less globalized world though, they don't really need a major alliance. They can make their own sphere of influence. They're already kind of one with the Persian culture sphere. Iran is a country whose geography and culture makes it incredibly easy for it to expand and influence outwards and assimilate other cultures diplomatically. They've always been a center of trade for the region and can continue that into the future. Their recent history is one of the only times they've really isolated themselves from the rest of the world, more as a backlash and hangover to finding out that foreign powers were controlling them rather than a calculated move by the leaders. But as the Iranian Revolution gets further and further away, Iran might be able to slowly open up to the world again and create a sphere of its own. Its economy is kinda awful right now, but its demographic structures are there for growth. If Iran were to change, it would be a failing economy and change of government through a revolution, not a foreign takeover or split up of the nation. As Iran goes into the future, it will probably resemble its past, transporting its goods, protests pretty much at all times, spreading its ways and influencing the region with dates and diplomacy.